Peace and powerful blessings, family. Welcome to another transformative episode of Uncovering Hidden Healing. I'm your host, Arletha Lizana, healer, educator, and founder of Sable Women Incorporated. And this series is brought to you in partnership with Morehouse School of Medicine and ProMetra International. So every Sunday, we gather here to explore ancient wisdom, sacred practices, and spiritual technologies that remind us of our inherent power to heal, grow, and thrive. And today's episode, family, is one that I believe will be deeply liberating. I am so excited. We are diving into wealth, not just as currency, but as spiritual, ancestral, and energetic force. So we are talking about Ajay, the Orisha of commerce, prosperity, and abundance, and Olokun, the keeper of deep wealth, stability, and the mysteries of the ocean. So, in African spiritual traditions, wealth is not just material, it's sacred. It's about alignment, divine timing, and ancestral blessing. And to guide us on this journey, I'm so honored to welcome Fasewa Awani, also known as Ariel Lauren. So, Fasewa is a Ianifa. She's an Ifa priest, a Shango initiate, and co founder of Ifa 360. She is also a funding expert and strategic advisor for startups and companies around the world. Her work featured in Forbes, Business Insider, Cheddar TV, BET, and Essence. Her spiritual roots run deep, connected to Ogbeweyan International Ifa Temple and Idin Eleke Ifa Temple in Osogbo, Nigeria. She is here today to help us understand how to activate abundance, align with Ajay and Olokun, and build true generational wealth. Fasewa, welcome to Uncovering Hidden Healings. We are so excited to have you with us today.
Hello, hello. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yes, so happy to have you. So we're going to jump really right in. So just like, let's start with your journey. So you're a spiritual leader and a global advisor in commerce and finance. So how did you come to understand wealth as a spiritual principle and not just something material?
Ooh, that's such a great question and honestly like a lead in. So for me, I have never really experienced finance, funding, business, etc., as separate from a spiritual experience. And so even on a personal level, what I'll say is that my connection to wealth, my connection to money, all of the things, and the different ways that we even understand wealth in traditional African spiritual systems, it's never been disconnected from the creator. And so for me, it's never like, oh, okay, like how did it connect? It's never been unconnected. So I really appreciate all of the insight, the wisdom, everything that the creator gives me to be able to create wealth, to experience wealth, to go deeper with wealth. And so, yeah, it's never been disconnected. And I think that's what's really beautiful about it.
Oh, yes, yes, absolutely. So, many of us have heard about Ajay and Olokun, but not everyone fully understands their roles in prosperity and abundance. So, let's kind of jump in with that subject. So, can you introduce us to these Orishas and explain their significance in the African spiritual tradition?
Yes. So in the Ifa spiritual tradition, Olokun is known as the Orisha of the deep sea, the ocean, right? And so when you think about the deep sea, what I love about many traditional African spiritual systems is that everything is looked at as a metaphor. So when you think about the ocean, no one understands even the depth of the ocean. No one knows how deep it goes. No one knows what's up underneath, certain, levels, et cetera. So it is really the perfect metaphor when you want to think about wealth, right?
Mhm.
Because even the experience of wealth, currency, money, all of these things, it can feel like such a mystery because in many ways it actually is. And for Ajay, like she is specifically known as the daughter of Olokun. And even her stories, one coming from that kind of oceanic lineage, but also her stories that have deep ties to good character, Iwa, integrity, like all of those things also get wrapped in. And so traditional African spiritual systems are very rooted in storytelling. And so oftentimes our understanding of the Orisha come from stories. It comes from observing and really digesting how they experience life and then applying that to our modern day lives. And so that's what I love to do.
Oh, awesome. I mean, so really, like, can you tell us like how the energies sort of like work together to create balance and abundance in our lives?
So I would say that everything in terms of Ajay and Olokun comes back to like very, how do I want to put this? Like just our own kind of like personal practices and journey. And so everything in our tradition, when we think about Ifa, really starts with your Ori. And it also, starts even just with your own connection to your ancestors and your daily practices. And so your Ori being your head, your intuition, your connection to your ancestors being, learning from your generational history, learning from even just the current folks that you also have here on the earth plane. All of these things are connected to how you might think of wealth, experience wealth, the patterns that you might have. And so it's, for me, when I look at it, less about specific connections to specific Orisha, but it's more so also uh, yeah, just very about my own kind of personal practice and my own personal journey.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. So, and when I think about like our personal journeys and things, I know that there are a lot of people who have like a complicated relationship with money, So I'm trying to feel like feelings of lack and scarcity and even guilt like around wealth. So how can we have begin to understand how Ajay and Olokun can help heal those mindsets and really help us kind of step into abundance, like how does that work, so how do these orisha and these really just these concepts, like how do we heal those concepts of lack and scarcity and all of those things?
Well, I believe that the healing is in the stories, right? And so the richness of our tradition comes through the stories that come out through the Odu. And so there are 256 Odu in the Ifa tradition, and each Odu has many verses that go into each one. And so these verses have stories, and that's what we look at in terms of really understanding how we can look at life. And through these different stories, is really where we can kind of take in the wisdom and look at like, okay, what's actually happening in my life, and how is this then applied to what I'm currently going through now. And so as the old saying goes, nothing new is under the sun, right? And so I think that's the beautiful thing about our tradition. It's that like, yeah, like we're not the first to go through money issues. We're not the first to try to uncover the secret kind of hidden mysteries of wealth. This is all part of the human experience. It's part of the human journey. And so there are often stories and blueprints that come from Ajay and then also from Olokun to give us that wisdom and that insight to kind of figure out how we move and how we just go about, tapping into that.
No, that makes perfect sense. So like because when we think in Western culture, like building generational wealth and just wealth is often tied to like our finances and our assets. But in like African traditions, it's also spiritual and energetic, right? So we're trying to activate, or we want to activate both the material and the spiritual aspects of legacy building. So, when you think about those concepts, material and spiritual, what comes to mind for you?
So everything is connected
Mhm.
in God. So what I love about our tradition is that it's not they don't experience life in this like super separate way. And so even down to like when you're in Nigeria and they might be doing spiritual work for you, there's still a lot of very like physical, practical, normal human stuff going on. Somebody could be on a loud ass phone call, in the middle of you having your ebal done, right? Like, but that is just like, it's all kind of like intertwined. And so when I think about the connection between the spiritual and kind of the earthly kind of human experience of money and wealth, I really look at the tradition as a whole as a metaphor for how we should move. And so, how we should move, in my opinion, is like very practical and spiritual integrated. Of course, you do your prayers, you speak to Olodumare, God, the creator, the Orisha. The way that I understand them is that they're all extensions of the creator. And so, whether we are, doing work for wealth and we are talking to Ajay, or we are talking to Olokun, it doesn't really, necessarily matter. Wealth is something that all of the Odisha talk about. And so when we are praying, we can also talk straight. I feel like when I'm talking to, and doing my prayers, everything that I'm speaking about is very practical, right? And so when I'm in my prayers, I'm talking and I'm asking for very specific things related to my business, my family, all of the things that I need to actually happen. And I'm physically moving at the same time to do those things. So it's not just prayer and offerings and like all of those things. It's also like, now sit down and go and write that sales page, and sit down and launch, and sit down and build that technology, and sit down and take those introductory phone calls. Like, it's also very like physical. And so I think we have to be careful not to get too into the woo, and not also do the very practical daily application of the work that has to be done to be able to tap into it.
That's right. That's right. I think that's a big that's a big part of it. And I was going to ask you, like what kind of advice you have for entrepreneurs and business people. I mean, you can, answer that too, but I'm thinking like, so like how do we make, these practices of both the spiritual and material, part of our everyday lives, right? So I mean, maybe you could talk about what you do, so talk about, your businesses and like how you came to, some of this spiritual understanding, and then at the same time, this practical business like understanding. So, we had our little spirit of business. You can talk about that, or you could just kind of talk about like, how you bring these worlds together. Maybe that's what it is, as a businesswoman, um,
Yes,
as a creator, like all those things.
it's all, I think at the beginning of the interview, I talked about how everything for me is such an integrated experience, because I don't experience the creator as separate from anything that I do, right? And so if you're talking about like just practically, what are the things that I do on a day-to-day basis, I would say that yes, like of course in our tradition, I am married to a babalawo. I am a Ianifa. We are definitely deep into the tradition, which is beautiful. And like, yes, the Yoruba have designed an entire calendar, where there are specific days of the week where you make prayers and offerings to different Orisha. Love it. It's amazing, right? And that is definitely something that can be used as a tool to ground you. What I will say is, I think one of the things that I learned from Nana Abbas, in our Akan tradition, is that the shrines are for you. They are not for the creator. Like that's not what they're for. The shrines are to help your practice, to
Right.
ground you,
Right.
so that you sit down and you do prayers. And so I carry that, and I love that, because it's for me. Again, I think so often we get into the woo, but more it's about like, are you being disciplined in your prayers and in your communication? And so when I look at the Yoruba calendar and the different days for making O'Shea, I don't make O'Shea every day. I was like, but when I do make it, whether it's on O'Shea Ifa or O'Shea Shango, like I specifically have a rhythm to make sure, thanks to that calendar, that I am actively in communication, actively praying, staying in a meditative state, staying in a communicative state. Like all of those things are very important. And then on the quote unquote kind of more practical earthly side, what I'll say is that I'm in my business. And so I work for hours at a time. Like I'm in that season of life, and I'm sure that there will be many different seasons where um, there are things that have to get done. I'm a CEO. I have clients. I have people that I'm responsible to, right? And so that is very important for me to make sure that I'm on top of my deliverables, that I'm in communication, that I'm showing up for calls, that my mind is sharp, that I'm able to really think through critical issues that are happening both in my business and other people's businesses. Like that is, the work. So being excellent at what it is that I do, in addition to also just making sure I'm putting forth the effort to be in communication and constant prayer, those are the things that automatically start to take care of a lot of the issues that we see, kind of come up on our wealth journeys.
Yeah, man, I love everything that you said. So many things like, this concept, of being excellent and putting your best forward, and also just, the shrines are for you. I love that. A lot of people are thinking, when they get shrines or when they learn or initiated that they're to heal everyone. Like, you got to heal yourself first. You have to deal with yourself and your household. Like, it's so important. I remember like back in the day, this is old story, but it's a story that always resonates with me. So maybe like, I want to say this has been a minute for me, maybe 15, 20 years ago. I think my children were young and I was like, my money was so low and I didn't have any money. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to go sleep. And I asked the answers like, okay, I'm about to go sleep. I need y'all to give me some ideas because I got to make some money. This not going to work. Right. So I went to sleep. I dreamt that I should sell flavored sugar like lavender honey, like lemon honey and all of that stuff. This is 20 years ago. This is before it got popular. And I was like, thank y'all. I did not do it, duh, I should have. I did not do it. But what that told me is they heard me, right? Gave me creativity, helped me realize something that I can do, to help bring in some more funds. Now, had I did that, that would have been a good thing too, because those things are popular now. But, it was this concept that the ancestors and the spirits are there. They hear you, so constantly. So as I'm working in my businesses, you're making sure, like you said, you're incorporating prayer, you're asking, you're working on yourself. So if they give you something to do, then you need to work towards that. You need to actually come and put in work. You got to show up. So, I liked how you told that, said that excellence and like how you do your daily work. I think it's so important. But, how can we, so when I think about, just the group, so everyone, so how do we consciously build generational abundance, that aligns with our values and spiritual beliefs?
So I think the first thing is that we have to actually think about how do we define abundance, right? So one of the favorite things that I love to just even point out from a philosophical standpoint is that in our tradition, when you go to see a babalawo or you go to see a Ianifa and they do an Ifa reading for you, we always ask, how does the reading actually fall? And the first thing that we ask is, does it fall, either in Ire or, Ayewo, right? So like, okay, cool. So is it, coming with signs of blessings, or is it coming in terms of warning, things that we need to be mindful of, et cetera. Okay, great. After that, we go down kind of life categories because in the kind of Yoruba tradition, they look at like a full abundant life in many different categories related to life. And so the first thing that they ask about is, is it long life and good health, right? Because that is the first and foremost thing that is a sign and important for abundance, long life, good health. Because without that, you can have all the money in the world. But if you don't have good health and long life, what's the purpose of it, right? The
That's
second thing they then ask about is your
Mhm.
money. Like, where's your money? Like that is important even before your marriage, even before your children, like all of those things, right? And
Yeah.
so I love that, like after they're like, okay, are you healthy? Are you good? Is it long life? Where's your money? All right. That's the second thing. Then they ask about, is it about your marriage, right? Or your relationship or whatever it is, right? Then they ask about your children and it goes on and on with some other, categories too. And so what that teaches us is that wealth and abundance is not just an experience of money. That's not where it starts and stops and ends. Wealth is an experience of all different categories of life coming together and elevating. And so that's what we celebrate. That's what we look for. And I think that when we're talking about building generational wealth, we have to look at all of the categories that go into that. Are we taking care of our bodies and positioning ourselves for long life and good health? Are we paying attention to our money and how it's flowing into our lives and how we're earning and how it's related to our careers, our businesses, et cetera? Are we paying attention to our partnerships, right? And, in our marriages and, all of that? Are we looking at children in terms of legacy, and who's part of our family and how that works? All of those things come into how we think about generational wealth abundance in that energy. Like we have to have deep understanding of all aspects of life because it all plays together.
No, absolutely, absolutely. So we're going to open it up to see if there are any questions. But while we're doing that, and people, if you have any questions, please go ahead and put them in the chat. Mama G says, "Peace, say why I will need it." So out to you. And so while we're waiting to see if we have any questions, I'm opening up. Maybe we can just talk about what you want to talk about. So what are things you think are important, in terms of, generational wealth building, legacy, all of these things that you're talking about today. What do you want people to know? Yes.
Mm, that's such a great, question. I think what first comes to mind is that everyone has their own path in terms of how they are going to create generational wealth, and abundance. On the outside, it can look very similar, but the internal kind of path to how we get there and how we create it for ourselves and our families, oftentimes is different, right? The skills that Olodumare blessed me with versus the skills that you're blessed with are very different. And I think that we have to first just be very clear about what our destiny is and what our path is. And so oftentimes, when people come into the Ifa tradition, the first thing that we're looking for, whether you're getting your hand to Ifa or maybe you even decide that you want to actually go through full initiation rites, is what is your path? What is your destiny? What is your Odu, right? Because once we know that, we can then start to think about, or you can then start to think about, like, okay, is this in alignment with what the creator intended for my life? And I think that staying on path, staying on destiny, that's really what allows us to be able to create abundance in all those different areas of life that I spoke about. And those are the things that we have to pay attention to, because if we fall out of alignment with our destiny and we are not doing the things that we were meant to do in this lifetime, we're going to find ourselves bumping up against a lot of roadblocks. And not that life doesn't have its ebbs and flows, but we'll find that things become unnecessarily hard. And so that's why I'm always like, yo, like, know what your destiny is, know what it is that you're here to do. And then from there, the strategy and the people and the opportunities, all those things will start to open up for you to be able to stay on path and create that abundance that you're seeking.
No, absolutely. Yeah, I totally understand that. And so, like, what advice do you have for people? So, you're a businesswoman and they're entrepreneurs. First of all, like, what things do you see, like, in this vast world of like commerce and finance and all the things that you do? And you've worked with so many Black women, right? This is what I mean, over the years, so many. So, what are some of the common things that you see around, like, spiritual concepts of money and finance and generational wealth, abundance? Like, what things are Black women encountering, both, I would say, maybe challenging, but also both positive? Like, what things have you seen in that world as you're working with Black women, entrepreneurs and business owners?
Yes. So one, I'll say that I think Black women have a very special connection to the creator. So we are the first. We are the first mothers. And I think that that carries a certain energy to it, and it carries a very special relationship that we have with God. That doesn't mean that other people don't have their own relationships with the creator. Of course they do. But for us, in terms of our level of intuition, our ability to be able to heal both ourselves and our communities, it's a little bit different. And I think that that's something powerful that can always be harnessed in terms of the way that we're able to show up in the world, both in our careers, but also for our families, our communities, et cetera. I think the other piece that I will add in terms of our communities, especially spiritual communities, is that sometimes I see people, and this is not even just Black women, et cetera, but I feel like people sometimes fall too deep into wanting the ritual to be the magic. And the ritual for me is the beginning of the work. It is setting the intention. It is setting the prayer. But once the prayer has been set and once the ritual is complete, how are you moving your feet? How are you showing up? How are you investing? How are you actually getting the work done and doing what needs to happen in this lifetime for you to live full out and be in your divine purpose? And so I would say that second piece of just making sure that we're always moving our feet, that we stay in that constant kind of communication and prayer. And even just to differentiate between like, okay, there's the ritual work, et cetera, and the initial setting of the intention. But then it's also just the constant communication that comes after that about like, okay, am I on track? Is this working? Is this not, right? The way that even for myself, I always kind of laugh, even for my husband as well. We are very practical priests, right? And so a lot of folks come to us and like, like what's the ritual for, this? And listen, love a good ritual, love a good bembe, love a good fallout. I love all of it, right? And if you would actually have a camera and watch how I talk to my shrines when I'm praying, it's literally like, I'm like, so this person, this business, this bank account, this deal, da da da, this child, this piece, that's happening in my marriage, etc. Like these are the things that I need counsel on, I need advice about, that I'm praying for, right? And I think that very practical side to talking to the creator, like, he, she, they are my mentor. Like that's the very much so the type of posture and conversation and energy that I have. And then the beautiful thing is that in our tradition, they talk back. And so they're like, okay, so this week, mind your character. This week, it's victory over all enemies.
That's right.
Yes,
Right.
we
Yes.
heard you, like your prayers are accepted. Double yes, like yes, everything fully clear, like big blessings, etc. Like all of that comes through the communication in terms of the way that we're taught to throw, obi, and many other kind of different, ways that we divine. And so that for me is just beautiful. But kind of going back again to I think the original part of the question, all of those things kind of wrap together and really help us stay on path, and understand what we're here to do. And that's, just the beauty of being a Black woman.
Yeah. Thank you for that. I mean, so I think that what I would add to that is really just kind of like a lot of ancestral wisdom as well. So, there are all these like sayings and, things that we're taught to do, by, Black women. So I know, we come from, market women, business women and things like that. So there was always like, don't put your purse on the floor, type of thing. My big grandmothers and my aunts, they always kept their money down in their bra, that thing. There is the keep a little bit, for yourself, to have your own money. So wherever, as you are taking care of your household, make sure that you have your own. So it's all of this ancestral wisdom as well that I think that we all need to, tap into and remember, how we were raised and what, our ancestors say about money. We had susu pots and collective, places, how we have benevolent societies where people would put in, little amounts of money. And then when someone needed it that month, they would get the pot of money to do whatever, if they needed to bury someone or something like that. So there was this collective, idea, of money, but also of like abundance and generational things like building businesses together, family compounds where people, would pool their money. So it's like all of these ideas. So, I want to just kind of like add those things. I think that a lot of people, we have this practical, advice that we forget about, a lot of times, so what did Big Ma say? Like, what are we supposed to be doing, with our money? So we're open for the audience. We do have one question. So one so far is for someone who's just starting their journey with the Orisha work and they're really interested in Ajay and Olokun, where do they begin?
Oh, okay. So I think that sometimes when we look at Ifa, it can feel very overwhelming, because there are so many different Orisha, and there is a lot that goes, into the tradition, because our ancestors' wisdom is vast, and the way that they see the world and understand different elements of nature, and different elements and aspects of the creator is vast. And so I think that we like to streamline the way that you come in. So first things first, I always say just get a reading, because that's typically the jump off point, to give Ifa the opportunity to be able to tell you like, hey, this is the Odu that is showing up in your life right now for this cycle. This is the energy of things that's around you. And from there, usually there's a level of instruction or an opening that comes into play about maybe what your path might look like if you decide to go deeper into the tradition. And so I say number one is always a reading. Number two, if you get to the point where you're like, hey, this really resonates for me, maybe you've gotten a couple of readings, maybe that first reading just really landed for you, and you're like, I really want to now like dive deeper into the path, then we always say you get your hand to be fought. And so that's usually like a 2 to 3 day kind of ritual and ceremonial experience of really finding out what is your life Odu. And the only time that that Odu kind of gets not replaced, but maybe just like kind of superseded, is if you actually go through full Ifa initiation rites. And so those are kind of the three, I would say, kind of steps, quote unquote, that people usually take when they're trying to get into the tradition. And so first things first is get the reading. Second thing is get your hand to Ifa. And then from there, I would say if you decide like, hey, I want to do initiation and I want to go through that full rites of passage and that full ceremony, then you go through your Ifa initiation, and that opens up a whole other path. So yeah.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. So we have people in the chat. A lot of people are just saying hi. So I'll say hi to everybody. They're like, but we do have one question. What small daily changes or lifestyle practices would you recommend to bring more abundance into your life?
Small daily changes.
Mm-hmm.
That's a great question. So I would say gratitude and observation, right? And so I put those two together because one, just being grateful for the small things that you're experiencing on a daily basis is really what will start to open you up to the abundance of what it is that the creator has to offer you on a daily basis. And so I love, even just like, you know what, wow, like I'm alive and my body feels great. That in and of itself is an accomplishment. We talked earlier in the interview about the power of good health, the power of long life. I don't take that for granted. And so even just that for me is like a big deal. And I'm also in a very observant just state of being throughout my day, looking at like, oh, okay, that's interesting. Like I met with this person today, or I got this message today, or I went outside and I saw this bird today, or this butterfly today, or this flower today. Like even just the smallest things that maybe at first you might not think are there or designed to send you a message. For me, I experience so many signs and wonders just on a daily living basis that I always feel like the creator is speaking to me. And that for me is the daily practice that keeps me, for the most part, in a state of abundance. Now, I'm human. So there are definitely those days where like the stress will get the best of me. And I'm just like, okay, whew, this is a lot. So you know what I do? I go to sleep.
That I go to sleep. I was just about to say when you said that open it, I was like, I go to sleep. So
I go to sleep
same,
because
right.
sometimes there are just some days that I'm just like, you know what? Fix it. Y'all fix it. After I go talk to my shrines, because sometimes I just go up there, and I say my prayers and I just get it off my chest, because like I said, I talk to my shrines like they are mentors, of mine. And so I don't have any fear around just laying it out. Like, and so after I do that and I get it off my chest, I go and I lay down and I relax for the day. And I decide that I'm not working, I'm not talking, I'm not doing any of those things. I'm a nap, I'm asleep, I'm gonna watch some Netflix, and that's gonna be that, right? And usually within about 24 hours, might take them about 48 hours, there's some sort of solution that comes up and they fix it. And that's
Mm-hmm.
okay. So sometimes
Yep.
you just have to give space for it to happen.
Yes, I was going to say it's space, so it's sleep, but also it's just relaxing. Because what I notice is like sometimes like I'm too hyper or I'm too worried about what's going on. So when I just let it go and just relax, go watch a show, go take a nap or whatever, then the answer comes. I'm like, oh, it just like it comes, very quickly. So it's that trust, that things will be taken care of. And then I used to like long time ago, it used to keep me up at night. I'll be like, oh my goodness, my money's so tight, keep me up at night. But then I was like, what can I do, is there anything that I can do tonight to change that? If the answer is no, then go to sleep because ain't nothing I can do right now. And then, I'm gonna need my energy tomorrow. And if the answer is yes, then get up and do it. Like, so it's kind of like, that was that. So same, So I think we had let's see, another question was more, let's see, about like I think it was like oh well we have two. Okay, so one is like, can you talk, do you are you able to talk about what the priest of Aj or Olokun, what they actually do? Like, if people are wanting to know, like how to approach them, if it does come up in their readings and things like that. So what do they actually do?
Hmm. Okay, so in our tradition, we have Ifa priests. So we have Babalawos and we have Iyanifas, right? So the masculine and the feminine. And Ifa represents just the entire pantheon of all Orisha. So you can go to a Babalawo and an Iyanifa, to do all work. So that's, I think, first and foremost, just an important distinction to make. Then we have specific Orisha, like priests, right? And so like there are priests of Olokun and there are priests of Ajay, right? So those also are, people who are initiated and specifically trained in that Orisha's path. So I am not an Olokun priest. I am not an Ajay priest. I am initiated Yanifa. I was like, and I'm also initiated to Shango, right? So for me, I cannot tell you like very specific rituals that maybe a Ajay or Olokun priest would do that's based off of that particular lineage. Now, are there ways that we appease Ajay and Olokun? Definitely, like their work is very one, water oriented, and so oftentimes when we are by the ocean, those are the perfect times to be able to do those prayers. If you don't live by the ocean and you don't have access, to that, that's fine as well. There is water that can go into just other rituals and other things that you can definitely do. So I would say that the way that I operate in my priesthood is that everything first starts with Ifa, and then whatever kind of needs to be done based off of the reading, if it does come up and they're like, you need to appease Ajay, like you need to appease Olokun, then that work can be done on your behalf. So yeah.
Hmm. So another question is just like how there talk people are asking about like healing money trauma. So that's, I think that's where that previous question kind of came from as well. But like we have so many people who have, especially of course Black people and on the continent and the diaspora just really have issues, financial trauma, chronic lack, just because of the situations that we find ourselves in. But how can people start healing the relationship they have with money today from a place of love instead of lack?
Yeah. So trauma is able to keep its roots due to stagnancy. And so you'll notice that a big part of our traditions, if we are trying to move trauma that happens in many different areas of our life, one, usually there's some level of physical movement that happens. And so it's the reason why you see there's a lot of drumming, a lot of somatic body, release, because again, trauma is rooted in being still. So you have to literally move that stuff out of your body, right? And so that's why we have bembes. That's why we sing. That's why we clap. That's why even when we look at how the Black church became something that really grew out of our African traditional spiritual systems, you see us literally like moving through the aisles, right? Like that's not by accident, right? Like that's all a part of that somatic release of trauma so that it doesn't sit in the body and then become, illness. In addition to that, breaking that stagnant pattern, right, is really what's important to think about when you're thinking about like your habits. And so what habits are you now putting into place to break away from maybe some of the things that might have been passed on to you generationally or taught to you, by your elders? How are you now looking for new habits that you can start practicing on a daily basis that will then turn into new patterns and disrupt that trauma. And so I also think that that has a big tie into the rooms that we put ourselves into, the elders that we get to choose to sit under, right? Because they're the ones that we're born into from a family perspective. But then they're also the mentors and the community, that we choose to be around. And I think that choosing good elders, choosing good mentors, good counsel, et cetera, also helps us to be able to break a lot of that trauma and those patterns moving forward. And so I would say those are the main things that I always look at, like body somatic release. And then the second thing being like, how do we sit under the right people and put in place the daily habits to be able to break that patterns and create new patterns for us to be able to tap into the abundance that we want to.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And then we got a couple of questions. I think they're related to what you're just saying, but also like, just remembering that these Orisha are, they're water and associated with water. And a lot of the spirits and Orishas, throughout the world are related to water and waterways. So another way that healing takes place is through baths. So, I'll just kind of add that part, just using baths and to move things, as well as using water to cleanse, the house, yourself, but also your house and, all of the other things as well. So just the incorporation, of water as well. So, okay, a couple of the questions, last two questions kind of, and I think you're answering these, but I'll read them. So is working with Ajay and Olokun a closed practice, or can just anybody pray to them? And you already started talking about Ifa and how you get into that.
Everyone, anyone and everyone can pray, to them. So it's not like my experience of Ifa and the way that we practice, in our Ile, in our tradition, in our community, is not that like Ifa is this like super mystical, like no one can da 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 unless it's behind closed doors. Now there are secrets and things that are not shared with the public that you have to be initiated to be able to be trained in and to know and to witness. But I would say like 85% of things can be done in public, and it's encouraged for it to be done in public because we want community participation, because that adds to the power of the work, that adds to the ashe. So when it comes to Olokun, like you don't even need a shrine, you don't need a priest. Go talk to the ocean, just go talk straight, go pray, go get in the water, go take a bath. Like those are the things that I think people should know, that you don't have to wait for a babalawo or a yanifa or a priest to be able to have relationship with the Orisha. Like you too, like once you understand like, oh, okay, Olokun is the deep sea, right? So think calories, think seashells, think all the things that come from the depths of the ocean that used to represent even currency and wealth in kind of ancient times, right? Like all of those things, go and sit with those elements, listen to the ocean, listen to the rhythms. All of those things come from the depths of the ocean and it's connected to the planet as a whole. There are so many people that even just going to sit on a beach. Why do you think people pay so much money for beachfront properties? Why they pay so much money to go on vacation? It does something to you somatically. It teaches you like things differently. It wipes your mind. It gives you a fresh slate. You can do that. You don't need anyone to be able to go and do that work. Now, of course, like you want to learn how to, if it's in your desire and you're like, hey, I want to learn how to pray, in Yoruba, I want to learn how to chant Oriki for Ajay, like all those things are great, but that's not the starting point. And I think that for anyone who wants to do that work and who wants to make that connection, you have full license, and freedom to be able to start those prayers. And you can start by praying in your native tongue. You can start by just going to the ocean. You can start by, even if maybe you don't have, an ocean, maybe
A
like
river,
you
a
said,
stream. Yes.
a river, a stream, a bath. I don't like
Yes.
whatever it has to look like for you, you get that done.
Yeah.
And
And that's what people need to understand. All that water is connected. We talk
yes,
about river, ocean, a stream, all of it, it's all the same water, really.
yep,
And I'm thinking about long before I was initiated, I was always getting into the ocean, like you said, going there to relax. Also, a river, I always like rivers and things like that. So I think about Oshun and Yamanja and all of these, other Orisha as well, who do have aspects, of wealth as well, so, I think it's so interesting that these are natural processes. And sometimes people don't think about the nature part of them, and that they're there and abundant, for a reason. So there was, oh, they said, love that answer. So from you, Ari. So they said, any success stories or lessons working with Ajay and Olokun? Do you know anybody who's been able
Ah,
to be successful?
yeah. I mean, I would say even my own life. We were having this conversation inside of our WhatsApp chat for our Elay, and I was talking about just like my own like experience working with different Orisha. Like, specifically when I'm going to Ajay, like I don't experience her for like quick money. She don't, at least for me, like she don't hit my prayers in that way. She hits like Jay will send me like a new business, a new investment property. Like she's that girl. If I need like fast money, I gotta go to my Baba. I gotta go to Shango. Like I gotta be like, hey, I need that lightning fast, like this deposit, made, or this payment's being held up, etc. Like he's that baba for me.
Like, yeah, I like that, this
Yeah.
conversation. Yes.
Like
Yes.
for me, that's how
Mhm.
it works. And so from an Ajay standpoint, I just went through the process of selling my home in
Mhm.
Miami. And that was a process of, yeah, we did Ajay work to be able to get that done, right? Because that's the sale of a big asset that is also then opening up new wealth pathways for us to be able to create different things and to make future investments. So I felt like that was an appropriate thing to bring to Ajay. But like the concept of wealth in and of itself, I don't experience wealth as quick. I experience wealth as something that's supposed to have longevity. It's supposed to be built in layers. It starts with a good foundation and it takes time. So, any Ajay work, I always expect it to take time. I don't go in asking and looking for something quick because that's just not the energy. And I don't believe that's what she represents.
Yeah, no, I like that. And I like how you're talking about, kind of like different Orisha and different spirits to approach, because like one of the spirits that I work with is a Khan spirit, and it's not a Abanasika. And so she is a river, but we call her Abanasika savings and loan, right? Because what happens is, what she teaches is that a small stream, a trickle, can turn into a river. And so it's putting your money away. So saving little, a little, a little, off the top. So as you get paid, and you put, $20 away, for another time. So it's like that type, of spirit, or that type of energy, versus like, I need this to come right now today, something that's being held up. There's like you said, generational. This is what I need to invest in. So when I think about Ajay, I'm thinking about investing and things like that, and there's Olokun, just like, how can I make things deeper, with, my money, my wealth, how can I, really understand, wealth in a deeper space. So I like that conversation as different ones. Let's see. So, so the question is about, like, how do you view when people say that their money is blocked, like especially for women, and the chakras, and they say they're, like your flow of your money. I guess that's the question. Is there any guidance that you have from your tradition in terms of like women and money blockages, or anything, any stories from any of the research or anything like that?
Um, okay. So sure. Are there spiritual, energetic, obstacles that come up? Absolutely. I think that that's just like part of the flow of life. But we always say that, everything for us starts with the reading in Ebal, and Ebal clears the path. And so that's where we kind of root our belief. And that's why when we do our readings and we go through the Ebal ritual, which is basically like, think of the reading as like the diagnosis, and think of the Ebal as like the prescription of what needs to be done to be able to, kind of fix whatever the problem is. And so once the Ebal is done, we're all just like, okay, great, and I think that, that definitely is the foundation of the practice. But what I'll also say is I think that sometimes people get too caught up into the story of having an energetic or a chakra block. And to me, I'm like, what are your daily habits? What are you saying yes to? What are you allowing in your life? And what type of new habits and new patterns are you creating? And so I always take it back to the very practical of self responsibility and what am I doing to be able to shift this. Now, if I'm doing all the things, and I'm showing up in a practical way. So let's give the example of like, okay, your money is low. And this has been a cycle that you've been observing for a while. Maybe you are no longer working a job. Maybe you've been attempting to go into full-time entrepreneurship and your business has not been doing what you want it to do, right? So you could sit there and be upset that, oh, like my business is not working. I'm blocked. There's something wrong with my chakras, et cetera. You can get into that story, or you could take a step back and say, okay, what are the issues that are actually in front of me right now? One, I'm lacking currency. I'm lacking money. Maybe I need to go back to work, or I need to get a part-time job. And it's not sexy. So people get upset, when we start to talk about these things, but that's the reality. The reality is that right now, you might have to go back to work because businesses, well, right, what we've been talking about, take time. That's not something that's done, overnight. And so that's not a chakra block. That's, hey, maybe you can do both for a little bit. And if you get back into the currency and the energy and you do something new and you create new habits and you create patience, oftentimes you'll see a lot of the things that you thought were blocks are actually not blocks. It's just giving time for the universe to rearrange itself. And I think is an important distinction for us to actually look at, so that we're not getting into the story of, oh, we have like, this problem and my chakras are blocked. Like most of the time when I actually really sit down with people and they tell me what's going on in their life, I'm like, I don't think that that's necessarily like, something. And even going back to the tradition, when we're checking in a reading, we'll ask, because sometimes it'll come up in a reading, they'll say like, there's a block that's coming from, et cetera. We ask like, okay, is it like a spiritual block? Is it a heavenly block? Or is it an earthly block, right? And these are all kind of very different energies that we do work around. And so I think that's important for us to remember as we're trying to figure those things out.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm just reminded, like, sometimes you just even be around the wrong people and their energy. So it's like, just remove yourself, type of thing. So like you said, or you got to go back to work for a little while, you really have to kind of discern, for yourself, so I look at that as like a process, meditating, really, really understanding, where you are and what your needs are and, what's going on around you, so I think that was really important. So, I mean, if I say, well, you poured so much wisdom, and light into this conversation. So, thank you so much for sharing all of the spiritual keys, the true wealth and abundance, with us today. For everyone tuning in, I just wanted to share a special offering. So at Sable Women, we have our Spirit of Business Abundance box, and we have 9 other boxes to activate prosperity and flow and alignment with divine wealth. So right now through the end of May, it's 50% off of all boxes while supplies last. So it's more than just a box. It's a sacred tool for setting intentions, offering prayers, and calling in the spirit of abundance in your life. So you can visit sablewomen.com to learn more and secure yours. And Fasewa, so tell us about IFA 360 and how we can connect with you and learn more about.
Yeah, so you can definitely follow us on Instagram. We have a lot of just exciting updates that we are going to be announcing over the next couple of months. And so I won't get too much into that, but I'm definitely excited just to see how much more of the tradition we can just bring to the world, and really just share the teachings, because they're so powerful, and they're so grounded and rooted. And I think that they're just very helpful as we all attempt to navigate life. The other piece, if you are interested in getting a reading, you can go to efa360.app, and there's a tab on the website where you can fill out a form to get a reading. And I honestly say that is always the jump off point, the starting point for you to just have a relationship, with the tradition, to explore it, to see if you like it. If you don't, does it land for you? Does it not? And so I always say start with the reading, and then from there you'll be in communication with my husband, Ajishape Awuni, and also with myself to be able to explore, whatever it is that the tradition might have for you. And so yeah, thank you for having me, and I'm super excited.
Yeah. Can I also add that you do work with people who need to do their initiations and, trips to
Yes.
Nigeria? I just add that on the side.
Yes, we do go to Nigeria, and we take people to go through their full initiation rites. We do hands to be found. We do all of the things. It's all on the website.
Yeah.
But specifically, I don't know if we have our initiation page updated, and so that's
Mhm.
something that we can discuss,
Uh,
after you get a reading. But Nigeria in and of itself is, first of all, going to Nigeria is an initiation. Not even just
in itself. That's right. That's right.
from the time you get on the plane and get off the plane, typically in Lagos, it
Yes.
is an initiation and it is a process. And so I will say that if you feel called to return to the land of your ancestors, it is worth it. It is worth going. It is worth being able to really feel that energy, feel the ground. It's worth it to be able to go to Ocean River, so our lineage specifically goes to Oshogbo. And so we love being able to go and visit Ocean River. It's a UNESCO site. It's protected. It's beautiful. And it's a very powerful, even just vortex to be able to set your intentions, to have even just members of the community pray for you. There's not like some Oshun priestesses praying for you in your life. And so it hits different. It hits different when you're right there in front of the river. And so these are the things that people who come with us on initiation get to experience. And I say it's like one of those things that you should always do in a lifetime. And so many people go back, but at least going once, like, definitely is going to change your life.
Beautiful, beautiful. So thank you so much. And family, remember, wealth is not just something you accumulate. It's something you align with. It's ancestral, it's spiritual, it's sacred. So may you walk with the energy of Ajay and the depths of Olokun as you build, grow, and heal in this world. Get out and go talk to some water, so, be one with the water, take a good bath, go get in the ocean, do what you can. So until next time, keep uncovering the hidden healing all around you. So peace, power, and prosperity.